This is gonna take crackerjack timing, Wang.
Total concentration. You ready, Jack?
I was born ready.
Welcome everyone to Thinking Critical. I'm your host Wes, as always. Today we're just going to give you a little bit of a This Week in X-Men Comics with my good friend Doc. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing spectacular. Yourself?
Oh, I'm doing just peachy, man. You ready to talk some X-Men?
Hell yeah. When am I not?
So this was actually a great week for X-Men. Last week's comic releases weren't very good, but this week's were really, really great. And we got some X-Men news to chew on, and let's hit that first. So apparently the second issue of Giant Size X-Men is going to be a Magneto story with Jonathan Hickman writing and artist Ben Oliver on the story. What are your thoughts on that creative pairing, and what do you want them to do with Magneto?
Well, I think it's actually a good pairing. I like Ben Oliver's art. He draws in a little bit more of a realistic, pseudo painted, but I mean, I'm not sure if he's still sticking with that style, but I really liked him when he did. I think he was the artist on The Authority, Human on the Inside. And even though the story sucked, the art was amazing for the whole thing. And I think, having a good writer with him, that'll definitely be something that I'm interested in. And Hickman's a very good writer.
Mm-hmm. So far Magneto is one of the characters that's getting a lot of shine in this new X-Men reboot. He feels a little bit different, but they're giving him a lot of humanity. Is there anything specifically you want to see them address in this comic, or any places that you think they could go that would be interesting?
Well, I would like to see them, because I've always maintained that a lot of this current Dawn of X, following up on House of X, Powers of X, is much more Magneto's dream than Xavier's. And having him kind of realize that is something that I'd like to see. Like, him recognizing that Charles finally came to his side instead of him coming to Charles' side. Because, Magneto's gone to Charles's side a couple of times, and he even went to Scott's side whenever Scott was essentially the ruler of mutantdom in Utopia. But seeing Xavier essentially go to Magneto's side is something that I don't know if Magneto's ever been prepared to do. Like, he's never been prepared for that to happen, because basically since the beginning, Xavier has disagreed with him on that approach. So he thought early on that, yeah, Charles will come with me. But he didn't, he never did. And so it's been, however long, they've known each other at this point in the Marvel sliding timeline. He's never had the experience Charles coming to his side and how he mentally handles that. Especially with him not actually still being in charge. Charles came to his side, but Charles remained. Oh God, I just was about to make a Charles in charge.
Charles in charge,
yeah. Yeah. But no. Like, he's never had to experience that. And I don't know how he deals with still being second banana, but also being right.
Mm-hmm.
This is untouched territory for Magneto, and I like it.
Yeah, it's been really interesting. He's definitely one of the story arcs or the characters that I think is actually been developed and elevated a bit in the series, and I think he's been that really well. So last week left a really bad taste in a lot of X-Men readers' mouths. Marauders just isn't hitting really well. Excalibur was really poor, but this week we got New Mutants #2, we got X-Force #2, and we got Fallen Angels #2. It was a big week. I would say all of them are good on their own merits. Some are better than others. Yeah. Was there one really bright spot in this week that you want to talk about and shine a spotlight on?
Oh, I almost said X Factor. Yes, the one book that doesn't actually exist. No, X-Force. X-Force is, I mean, Ben Percy he's nailed it on almost every page of both issues so far. And Simon Kudranski's art on this issue.
He's the Fallen
infinitely
Angels.
Oh no, yeah, you're right.
Joshua Cassara.
Joshua Cassara on this issue was so much better than the first issue. I don't. It's almost like a different artist, but he leveled up so fast just on that second issue, and I really liked the art. It was a lot less muddied. It was a lot less, kind of sketchy. He felt much more sure of himself, and I think that was also reflected in the writing. The first issue was really good, but it was a little, you weren't sure what was going on. And I think he was just, Ben Percy was just trying to kind of feel it out for that first issue. But on the second issue, he knows exactly where he's going. And in my opinion, X-Force is the best of the X-Men books right now. The art is solid, the writing is solid, the story he's telling is very interesting. I want to know a lot more about these villains, who I want to even know what the hell their name is, because we don't even have that. When you can have a group of villains with essentially no face and not even a name, and already people are intrigued by them, you're doing something good.
It's interesting, Jonathan Hickman's X-Men series kind of really feels kind of Claremontish, especially X-Men #2.
Yeah.
But this X-Force is the only book that feels like it's directly out of the pages of House of X and Powers of 10. And I think that's why I'm liking it so much, because it feels like a direct connection to that series, where everything else kind of feels disconnected. Also, I'm not a very big fan of Kid Omega. I mentioned it in my review. I am shocked that Ben Percy was able to write that character with Wolverine, not make me want to see Wolverine stab him in the face.
Well, I wanted to see him stab him in his face, but I wouldn't have laughed. Like, I like that really they don't like each other. Like, that Kid Omega does not like Wolverine. Wolverine does not like Kid Omega. But yeah, like, I mean, the Wolverine and the X-Men, like the Jason Aaron run on that, where Kid Omega was in there. Oh God, it was terrible. He was just this whiny bitch. And whenever they did, whenever he was in Generation X, also terrible, whiny little shit. But now he's smug and sarcastic, and he's a dick, but he's not whiny. And it's good. He's that guy that he's Guy Gardner for the X-Men.
Yeah, he's annoying and everything, and I get that, what his character traits are, but I don't hate the character like I normally do, by the way that millennials kind of are portrayed in comics these days. So I have to give Percy a lot of credit for that. He did an excellent job with that dynamic.
Yeah, he took away the whininess, but kept the ability for you to hate him, but still want to see what he does next. And I think that's good.
So we talk about, like, the high point, so far, is X-Force. X-Force 2 is definitely the high point for me in this week. Is there one thing about, some of the other comics that just didn't work for you?
You know what? I didn't like Fallen Angels as much this week. I loved the first issue. I wasn't a huge fan of the second, because nothing really happened. It felt more like a filler issue already on issue 2. Like, you set up all this cool stuff with this techno drug, and and the stuff with with Quanon needing to get off the island, and then they still spend the entire issue on the islands, not really doing anything. I mean, they go off to that one that base, but that's like in the last like couple pages of the last couple of pages, they're finally off the island. It took them almost 40 pages to get off the island when they set it up in the first 22. They should have been off the island in the first 5 pages of this issue, but they just kept going. And now, on the other hand, X-23 is actually starting to feel like X-23, and she's not Mom Vereen anymore. So Bryan Hill might be doing his job of saving her from needing to be thrown into the sun too. But yeah, no, it was good, but it felt like mostly filler.
I really dislike the art in that book too.
Yeah, like none of the plot advanced. None of the plot set up in issue 1 advanced in issue 2 at all. And that was disappointing. Yeah. And now New Mutants, the first 4, like if you judge that book entirely off the preview pages, I'm sorry for you, because you missed out on a pretty good book. The first 4 or 5 pages of that were god awful. It was self-impressed millennial faux Tony Stark as Robert DaCosta. And I had to force myself through those first 4 or 5 pages. I wanted to rip the book in half because it was so irritating and grating. But after you got past that Bobby monologue stuff in the first couple of pages, it ended up being a really good issue. But they're already where they needed to be. Now they get to, I guess, go where they're going, where the whole point of this story's going. I think issue 3 is where it's going to really start picking up, because they've already started introducing, bringing back in the Shi'ar, Xavier's daughter, with Lilandra. Yeah.
So I would read the solicitations, because while half the team is in space, there are going to be issues featuring the other half that are on Krakoa that Brisson's going to be writing. I'm not sure if the third one is one of those. So you might have to wait for issue 4 for that.
Okay. All right. But yeah, I mean, I feel like they're getting going on that book.
Yeah. New Mutants definitely took a big leap forward. I thought it was kind of mundane and boring, the first issue, and this one was actually pretty interesting. You got a lot of good dynamics between Cannonball and Sunspot, as well as there's like the weird third wheel kind of thing going on, because what's his new ice name? Adam Smasher?
Just Smasher.
Oh, Smasher. Okay. And there's kind of, you can see there's a lot of history there, and it comes right through the pages.
Yeah, and it's this kind of great dynamic of, you're married now, and your college best friend is back in your life now, and your wife's like, I don't like this. Yeah, because you kind of mentally go back to that, but she's kind of pulled you away from being that. So, Cannonball's kind of stuck in the middle, like, I love both of you guys. I don't know what the problem is. And they want you to be 2 different people. And I like that.
The last thing I want to talk to you about is, I know when the resurrection process was introduced to X-Men, will death mean anything anymore? I will say after X-Force #1, it didn't really feel like it did mean anything as far as Charles Xavier was concerned. Yeah. It didn't feel like it was very impactful through the other issues, including X-Men #2. But I think they made it very impactful in X-Force #2. What did you think about the way he handled Charles' assassination?
I think it tried to make it very impactful, and it worked to some degree. Like in the confines of the book itself, yes, it absolutely works. But when you go back and you compare this to the some of the info dumps in House of X, Powers of X, where they already say that Charles has already put himself into, like he's on his like fifth or sixth body, and he's already rebooted to previous versions of his mind twice.
Well, they never said he's on his fifth or sixth body. They said he's re-uploaded his own mind 4 times.
Okay, well, I mean,
Jean Grey didn't do that, so
well, then who the hell did? That's my question.
he did it to himself.
Okay, so so he put himself into other, and what did he do?
He put an older version of his soul back into his current husk.
Okay, that's because that's not the way that I read that. I mean, I guess that makes sense then. That there'd be, problems with Jean figuring out how to do it, but Jean's done this kind of stuff before. Hell, she carried Xavier's consciousness in her own head at the same time as her own consciousness, like his complete consciousness. Now, she ended up suffering really terrible nosebleeds and was basically dying until they managed to get him back into his own body. But this is back in Morrison's run. She carried both of their consciousnesses in her head, and she used Cerebro to do that. Well, she used Cerebra to do that. New Cerebro, I don't know. It can't be that different. So it's not really, and she put his mind back into a body before, when he got his own body back from Cassandra Nova.
Well, yep, I do think it's going to be interesting. I think it's got to be leading to something. Something's got to go wrong here, but only time. We know that there is I believe it's an X-Force cover, or it's X-Men. I can't remember which one. It is Jean Grey with Cerebro on, and it has to be her re-uploading Charles' soul into his husk. So
and
overall, I'd say this is a great week for X-Men. What do you think?
I think it's probably the best since it's easily the best week of the relaunch. Probably the best week of X-Men, other than the House of X, Powers of X weeks. I'd say for quantity, for more than just one, only having one title per week. I'd say it's probably the best X-Men week since probably since Fraction was doing Uncanny, and Remender was doing Uncanny X-Force.
Nice. So it's been a
probably
been a couple of years.
Yeah, probably 8 or 10 years.
Yeah. So I really like this a lot. I'm glad you enjoyed it as well, Doc. Thank you so much for joining me today, talking a little bit about X-Men with the giant size X-Men Magneto special, and then talking a little bit about X-Force number 2, New Mutants number 2, and Fallen Angels number 2.
Anytime, man.
Later, brother.
Take care.
If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. I would appreciate it very much. It helps us attract more views for the channel. Subscribe for future commentary, comic book news, and reviews. And don't forget to ring the bell for notifications. If you want to talk comics, movies, and much, much more, you can follow me on Twitter at Wes_from_TC. With that, Salamat Po, and I'm out.